Hello, my name is Andrew Keane. Welcome to Keane on America, the daily interview show about the United States. Hello, everybody. It is Thursday, the 26th of March, 2026. We've been preoccupied with stories recently on the show. A couple of weeks ago, we had Kevin Ashton on the show, the author of a really intriguing new book called The Story of Stories, which argues that we humans invented language in order to tell stories. In other words, the desire to tell stories came before language, and we created language for the telling of stories. And in a few days, I've got a really interesting conversation with the biographer of Bob Dylan, second act of Bob Dylan, Robert Polito. He has a wonderful new book out called After the Flood. And he ends the book with reference to one of the great songs from Dylan's last album, Rough and Rowdy Ways, called Key West. And one of the lyrics in that song is, "That's my story, but not where it ends." And that's how he ends the book. And stories, of course, are stories because they never end. And my guest today, Colum McCann, knows that as well as anyone. A distinguished, brilliant writer, best-selling writer, thinker. He's been on the show before. Actually, he came on last year to talk about his telling of somebody else's story, Diane Foley, from McCann's excellent book, American Mother. And he's back on the show today to talk about another of his initiatives. He is the co-founder and president of a group called Narrative 4, which focuses on the importance of telling stories. And Colum is joining us from a barn, a cold barn in Connecticut. Colum, welcome back to the show. Lovely to see you again.
Lovely to see you too.
So I'm not sure if you if you've had a look at the Ashton book, The Stories of Stories, but what do you make of his thesis, Colum, that we humans invented language in order to tell stories?
Yeah, I watched both of the episodes, and you know, it's fascinating to me. It's some of it's above my pay grade, I think. But one of the things that I often say is that the scientists held together with the muons and gluons and atoms, molecules, and that's of course obviously true, or certainly seems to be true. But really, the shortest distance between you and me, especially at this particular moment, is a story. And it does seem to me that the world is woven together with stories. I do feel that it's become sort of trendy to talk about stories at this particular moment, and that I'm a little bit scared that some people might think it's too trendy and everyone's hopping on a bandwagon. But look, I do think that stories are incredibly important. They can be used in all sorts of ways. In the right hands, they can work miracles, but in the wrong hands, they can be very dangerous, and they can take your house away, they can take your car away, they can take your identity away, they can take your country away. And I think it's very important for us to be able to to reach out to one another, and that's why I got involved with this organization, Narrative 4, over a dozen years ago now, Andrew. It's
right. So you're not. I mean, speaking of jumping on bandwagons, Colum, if everyone's jumping on the storytelling bandwagon, it's your bandwagon. You founded it back in 2013. But what was your thinking? Why did you co-found it? And who was your co-founder?
My co-founder is this amazing person by the name of Lisa Consiglio, and she was in charge of a literary organization in Aspen, and she brought together all these writers and thinkers to the mountains up beyond Aspen, and she asked a very simple question: what do you think is the highest aim of storytelling? And actually turned out not to be such a simple question. There was people like Toby Wolfe, Terry Tempest Williams, Daryl Burke, Asaf Gavron, Reza Aslan. It was a wonderful group of people. And we all got together and we started talking about the power of empathy, the power of telling one's own story, but also telling somebody else's story. And we got to the stage where we started to talk about the nuclear power of being able to inhabit the story of someone else. And so we got to the stage where we started to talk about what would happen if we would tell one another's stories. So if you and I were together in the room, I would talk to you. You tell me something profound from your days in London, or when you first came over to the States, or and I would tell you, say, a story about my bicycle journey across the United States when I was 21 years old. And then you and I would get back in the group and I would say, hi, my name is Andrew. And I would tell your story and you would tell my story. And what happens is there's an incredible sparking in the brain. It releases dopamine and but it also engages those areas that have to do with memory, that have to do with imagination, that have to do with deep empathetic engagement and understanding. And it's something that now we have applied to the lives of young people all around the world. So we created this organization, Narrative 4, which is now a global organization. We're in 30 plus countries, 12 countries in Africa. You know, we're very strong in Ireland and in
35 countries. I mean, I was looking at your website, 1,200 school partners, 285,000 participants who engaged in your story exchanges in the last couple of years. So those are serious numbers.
Yeah, they're serious numbers and they're powerful numbers. I got to tell you, when I go into a school and we run this program, it's one of the things that I feel makes me happy about where we are now, and gives me some form of hope. Look, these are dark times. We talk a lot about how dark and shattered these times happen to be. But I will tell you, for example, one of the things that we have done is we got together with these kids from the South Bronx, which is as you know, the poorest congressional district in the United States. And we put them together with kids who you would think would not be able to get on very well with them, kids from the hollers in Eastern Kentucky. So on one hand, you have these kids who are black, the other hand, black and immigrant. The other hand, the kids who are white and or Cherokee. One group is rural, one group is urban, one group is red politically, one group is blue. Put them in a room together and guess what? They're terrified of one another. Terrified. Until they get a chance to tell a story. Now, the secret sauce here is that they have to tell a personal story, not a didactic story, not a moralistic story, not something that attempts to win an argument, not something that says, you know, I'm going to change your mind, Andrew. You know, you should be thinking differently about, you know, X, Y, and Z politically. Rather, it's something that gets deep down, opens up the rib cage, turns the heart backwards a little bit, and suddenly they realize, oh, we're not so different after all. Now, that might sound a little bit kumbaya to some people, and perhaps it is, but I'm prepared to say that it's one of the things that I have seen that can radically change a school environment and even a community when it's done properly. So our real thought behind all of this is stories lead to action, lead to change on the.
Yeah, and there was when you launched Narrative 4, there was a feature on you in the New York Times Magazine with the headline, Colum McCann's Radical empathy. Sometimes the E word gets overused, but is that what it's all about, Colum? If we
Yeah,
tell each other if we not tell each other our own stories, but if we try and put ourselves in someone else's story, then we acquire empathy. Is that the real foundation of narrative 4?
yeah, in many ways. I mean, empathy is not the word that translates in all directions, and I do want this stuff to translate in all directions. I'm really interested in it going across various political divides. Like we brought kids together from, say, Limerick and Belfast. So kids from the South Hill Road with kids from the Shankill Road. Now, kids from the Shankill Road in Belfast didn't even know that there was a town called Limerick in Ireland. And then you would think, because they're coming north and south, that you think they were going to kick the head off of one another. In fact, one of the young fellas said, we're afraid we're going to start war. And then when they got into this position of understanding one another, things sort of dissolved. And we've done this in several different instances. Is it about empathy? Yeah, but it's about compassion. It's about decency. It's about recognizing, yourself. It's also about recognizing your life outside, that arc, that radius that you live in which you operate in your phone. Maxima culpa. I have a relationship with my phone, and sometimes I don't like it, but I see young people and they'll come to me and we'll go in, say narrative 4, we'll go into the classrooms and they'll say to me, "Oh man, I'm sorry, I don't have a story." And I will say, "But yes, you do have a story. You just have to access the story." But they say, "No, no, no," because they've gone through this terrible, terrible epidemic of loneliness and isolation. In particular, the young people of the past, say, decade. And then when they're given a chance, they're surprised because, wow, someone's listening to my story. Ooh, somebody's not only looking me in the eye, but they're telling my story back to me. So my story must be valuable. And the great exchange there is not so much of empathy, but of sort of an equality find, because you give someone your story, then you want to have your own treated, decently. And they won't always get the details right. I could say, okay, hi, my name is Andrew. I grew up in Bristol and I'm a Stoke City supporter, which I know you're not. But
fortunately, on both accounts.
Yeah. But it's okay what we really want is to get at the texture of the story, the profound truth. Look, we live in an age, and you talk about this, and lots of people come on your show talk about the disease of our times. These that facts have become mercenary things. You can ship off a fact to whatever little orphanage you want it to go to. You can take a fact and it can be used by any number of sides in any facts are convenient things, and it's fascinating. But what is actually what are the true facts now of human experience? It seems to me that the true facts of human experience are the ineffable things, the things that we can't pin down, the things that don't have a statistic that we can wrap around them. These ideas of love and pride and pity and compassion and sacrifice and even violence, things that these things are actually become the I don't know, the signals of contemporary experience, or the facts even of contemporary experience. So what we're asking these kids to do is to tell something that matters to them. Get into the heart of things and see what you can discover there. And invariably, they end up feeling better about themselves and feeling better about the other side. So we had a huge study done by the University of Oxford and the University of Ohio, and it just came out a couple of weeks ago. And the polarization was dramatically reduced when young people got together. And there were all sorts of benefits to the idea of our form of stories and storytelling. Does that mean it's going to change the world? I mean, I wish it could, but it's a drop in a drop in a drop in a drop in the ocean. But at least it's a drop, you know.
Colum, yesterday was a big law case on about how Facebook and YouTube are addictive social networks that are ruining young people's lives. And this has become an increasingly familiar legal story in America these days. Some people, though, when social media was invented in the first decade of the century, thought that social media would be the platform, the opportunity for everybody to tell their stories. Now, I think many people think the reverse. It's become a platform for destroying storytelling in a way. Why didn't social media work out? Why the need for something like Narrative 4 when we've got Instagram and Facebook and YouTube and all these other platforms?
I think the simple thing is that this human contact matters so much. This ability to look beyond the one-dimensional space of and to get beyond the phone. Look, we can use technology. There's ways to use technology. Technology is neither good nor bad. We all know this. It's like that Niels Bohr notion, who talked about, like, at the far end of every good argument, there's an equal argument that works just as well. So I can tell you that technology is good, and I can tell you that technology is bad. It's how we use it. There's nothing inherently wrong with this thing. It's plastic, and it's
And for people listening, Colum is waving his iPhone.
Yeah, my phone. Nothing inherently wrong with the phone. It's made of it's cathodes and diodes, I presume, and copper and bits of some precious metals and plastic. But it's our relationship with the phone. It's how we choose to use it. My son, who heard that that verdict yesterday, he has been saying for years that social media is going to be like the cigarettes of the future, and turned out that he was actually correct. I mean, yesterday was a big tobacco moment for social media, and in fact, even the day beforehand, there was another case, I believe.
Another Facebook case, yeah.
Another Facebook case, yeah. So why did it fail? I don't know. Do you think that these guys are bad? Are the people behind the curtain, are they inherently bad? Do they want something from us? Do they know from the get-go that what they're going to do is try to destroy us? What do you think?
I have to be a little careful here, Colum, because my wife is head of litigation at Google. So in our house today, or yesterday, it wasn't such a happy day. But off the record, of course, nobody's watching. I think I have a degree of sympathy with what you're saying. You mentioned Niels Bohr, one of the 20th century's great scientists. You recently made an interesting speech, which began with reference to a couple of the other great 20th century scientists, Albert Einstein and Sigmund Freud, who had an interesting exchange on the value of stories. What do Einstein and Freud tell us about the value of stories?
It's really interesting. So back in the 1930s, Einstein decided, he could see things go into pot. The German propaganda machine beginning.
Course, was it?
Well, he recognized 432 before Hitler got in power, but he could see the things beginning to crumble. And he decided to write to Freud, and he said to Freud, "Do you think that there's any way that we can learn that humanity can learn to curb its instinct for war?" And a couple of letters went back and forth between the two, who were really the two greatest minds, the bellwether minds of those particular times, recognized as such at the time too. And Freud wrote back saying that that essentially no, that mankind's instinct for death and destruction could not be curbed. He used a lot of his arguments, in order to investigate over a course of 14 handwritten pages that he wrote back to Einstein. But he said at the end, and this is what's interesting to me, Andrew, he said at the end, despite all that, the desire to end war is not something that we should ever abandon, because he believed in what he called a, quote, a mythology of instinct and a community of feeling. And so that the only way that we could curb our tendency towards this terrible doom was to communicate with one another, community of feeling and a mythology of the instinct, basically storytelling. We saw that was in 1932. The book came out in 1932, sold 2,000 copies, but then faded away, because we all know what happened, in the 30s, and why Freud and Einstein both had to flee, and the world went down its various tubes. It's ironic to me that we're still talking about the same old question. Doesn't mean that we can't find.
So did they disagree? Were Einstein and Freud in disagreement on the value of story?
No, they weren't in disagreement at all. I mean, Einstein saw it, but Einstein thought of it more in terms of, a world government, in terms of getting, the United Nations together, in terms of getting, these bureaucratic regimes together. He dreamed of that sort of world government, whereas Freud saw it much more on an individual level. If we could have been able to put the two together and harness the power of what they were saying, it could have been a mighty thing. Who knows what would have changed in history if people had been allowed to, to merge those sort of ideas. They were very much together, but I think Freud said, "I am old and I've been telling people the truth for a long time." He was older than Einstein at that stage, and he was sorry to disappoint him, but he didn't think it was possible to ever cure humanity of its instinct for war. But it could be mitigated by knowing one another.
Colum, you're best known as a novelist. Perhaps your best known novel, Let the Great World Spin, won all sorts of awards, including the National Book Award in 2009. So it's not really surprising that as a professional storyteller, you founded Narrative 4. What do you think of scientists? I mean, Kevin Ashton he's not a hardcore scientist like Einstein or Freud, but he's nonetheless a kind of social scientist trying to analyze language. Is there an artistic or a scientific foundation thinking behind Narrative 4, or is it a mix of the two? Do you think we need to come up with scientific explanations of the value of storytelling, or is really what the novelist does good enough, can't really be quantified?
It's a brilliant question, and it's actually one that's entirely on my mind right now. I would say that the stories should be enough, and I would wish that the stories could always be enough. But the fact of the matter is that we do need metrics more and more and more behind all this, for our schools, for our politicians, for companies that want to fund us, for people who want to get behind us. Metrics happen to be You know, they're the key into the door. So if we can tell, people that polarization goes down because of storytelling, they're they're going to perk up, and they're going to look at something like narrative 4 and say, well, maybe we can find some form of repair there. It does seem to me that the theme of our times is it has been and will be for quite a while the theme of repair. I love bringing up the theme of repair with these kids. I say, okay, why don't you tell each other a story about repair? And they say, "Oh, I don't know anything about repair, man." It's like I would say, but then they tell stories about like repairing their bicycle tube, or repairing their relationship with their grandfather, or repairing their school, or repairing their community, and all of these things are marvelous when I witness them. And I wish I could bottle the energy that's there, but I also have to bottle the science behind it to convince people that this is something that we can do. So yeah, when we talk about like scientists getting on board and braiding themselves in with artists, I think it's incredibly important. In fact, I don't think we do enough of it. I don't know about you, but I think artists, scientists link in better with artists than artists link in with scientists. I mean, I think the scientists have a better handle on art than the artists do of science. I say that for a number of reasons, not least because science has entered into the realm of mystery in so many ways. And we don't know a lot. And so they reach for, like, the word quark comes from Finnegan's Wake. Um, and Murray Gell-Mann was looking for a word. He happened to be reading Finnegan's Wake at the time, and he came upon the word quark, and the rest is sort of history. But science started engaging in sort of poetic naming, and I think now, if you go into some of the AI firms, they're even hiring artists and philosophers, and I wish they'd hire more of them. But
I hope they pay them.
because
Kevin
I hope so
Ashton
too.
was, and he's a technologist. He was actually the guy who invented the term "the Internet of Things." Is very pessimistic on AI and its impact on storytelling, or its ability to tell storytelling. Your profession, Colum, you don't need me to tell you this, is incredibly nervous about AI, about replacing human storytelling with machines. Can machines tell stories? Do you have a role for machine narratives in narrative 4, or does it need to always be between humans?
I don't know. And actually, I'm really fond of saying right now, I don't know, because I do feel that we have this certainty that's come into our environments, and everyone has to have an answer. Do I see machines being able to? I do see machines being able to tell stories, but they're like telling the stories that we have told and telling them in new patterns and in new ways. Do I care about those stories? Personally, no, absolutely not. But I'm not as scared of AI as a lot of people happen to be. I always think that we're going to be one step ahead of it, and it's built on all these other building blocks. And it's going to take some sort of peculiar genius to harness the beauty of all of those things. Look, I'm both a going back to Niels Bohr. I'm both a pessimist and an optimist at the exact same time. That's a very Gramsci notion as well. Being a pessimist of the intellect and an optimist of the will. But I'm prepared to say that I think we can use this stuff that appears to be capable of destroying us. I think that we can use it in a more profound manner, and that we somehow keep ahead of the game. I'm aware, of course, that if Einstein were here, he would say, "Well, we need controls on this. We need a United Nations to come together to put controls on social media and so on." And the results of the juries yesterday, really interesting to me, because we're beginning to put to recognize that we need to put controls on these things. But stories matter. They can do anything, Andrew. They can take away all my books, right? They can't, like, the book itself might go like opera, or the book itself might be gone entirely, but they can never, ever, ever take away stories.
Yeah, they're
That's one
collectively
of
owned.
the
Going back to that wonderful line in Dylan's Key West, that's my story, but not where it ends. And certainly it's not where it begins either. Stories are infinite. I mean, some people suggest that there are only a number of stories that we tell and retell in different ways. What about this issue of ownership, Colum? IP, both in AI terms and in terms of what you're doing at Narrative 4. Should people be possessive about not just their own stories, but other people's, or do we need to share them a little more selflessly? Dylan, of course, shared them from some people's point of view a little too selflessly. Sometimes he's been accused of borrowing without permission, but of course he's a great storyteller.
Yeah. What was it T.S. Eliot said? I think it was T.S. Eliot said that good writers imitate, great writers steal. But I don't know. I think that I'm fairly comfortable with the notion that if you've told your story, or if you've written your story and it's out there in the world, it should be available for others. We get our voice from the voices of others. This is what happens. Nobody springs up out of the out into the world with a voice that's fully formed. We have to read first. We have to do our philosophy. We have to listen to our music. We have to listen to the idiots too. And eventually we come out with our own voice. It's been built on a pyramid of many other voices. And to say that we own something entirely seems wrong. But you don't want people pinching stuff. But in relation to these stories that we tell in Narrative 4, we don't publish them. They stay in the room. And the lessons are the things that leave the room. So the power of the story is not actually the story itself, but what it evokes and what it makes you feel. That to me gives me, whenever I do one of these things. I was in Portland, Oregon recently, and I met a number of young kids, and they told stories, and they were reluctant to do it at first. And at the end, they all wanted to stay in touch with one another and stay in touch with me, in fact. And I thought, well, this is the way that we build community. This is the thing that actually matters. So I have that optimism, but I also know how dark the world is, and I have to be able to balance these two things together. It's a bit like Philippe Petit on his tightrope. When he did his tightrope walk
and
across.
that's of course from your great novel, Let the Great World Spin. Colum, we did a show recently with the Yale political philosopher Elaine Landemore, as an expert on citizen assemblies, where by lottery citizens get together to make policy, and this has been most successfully, I think, pioneered in Ireland, especially around abortion. And I actually made a film about this a few years ago, went to Ireland, talked to a woman who'd been on this citizen assembly, and she spoke of the value, the physical experience of talking to others and experiencing, I guess, their stories, though maybe she didn't use the S word, particularly, I think, for men, beginning to understand the women and abortion. Can this be manifested in political terms? I know that your Narrative 4 focuses mostly on education, but Anna, have you had a look at citizen assemblies? I'm sure you're familiar with what's been happening in Ireland, and now Landemore is pioneering something in Connecticut, probably just up the road from you. Can this be manifested more concretely in political terms?
Yes. It's going to take real courage, and it's going to take some people really believing in this and having being tenacious, desire, stamina, perseverance. Obviously the system that we have is completely broken right now. Can it get even more broken? Yes, it can. The political system. The political system that we have is completely broken. So can it become more broken? I think so. But can we begin to pull it back together with things like these citizen assemblies? Absolutely. Now, I wish that I could harness the energy that we have towards our educational stuff in order to bring this out into the wider world. But we have done things. For example, we went out to Dakota and we brought people who were anti-immigration together with immigrants, Somalian immigrants, and put them together in a room to tell stories to one another. And they ended up changing their opinions dramatically as a result of that. It's about the desire to actually put boots on the ground. And look, okay, this may sound silly, but um, you're not going to slam a missile into a fruit market in X city uh, if you know or that person's story and if you know their background. It's certainly not going to be such an easy thing to do, and given the expense with which we recklessly go in and try to change regimes and democracies in various parts of the world, wouldn't it be better to have put money into the Voices of America's sort of radio stations and so on, than what we have. We've allowed desire to change things to sort of slip away from us. It upsets me, but I still think it's possible to retrieve it.
Colum, as I mentioned earlier, you were last on the show. You were last year with Diane Foley. You told her story as an American mother and the story of her son in this book. And as I said, you're also a very distinguished novelist. Are you, in a sense, and I don't mean this in a critical or accusatory sense, but are you trying to turn everyone into Colum McCann? Where did your stories come from? Why didn't you need to go to narrative 4?
Nobody needs to be to be me. Look, I feel privileged. I feel lucky. I learned this. I came from Ireland when I was 21. I came to the United States. I sat down, Andrew, to write a novel, right? And I bought a typewriter, and I thought I was going to be Kid Kerouac, and I bought a big roll of paper. And at the end of that summer, all I had was a foot and a half of gibberish. And I looked at myself and I said, you don't really know all that much. You better get out and go into the world. And I ended up taking a bicycle for the next 18 months across the United States. And I learned a lot of things, an awful lot of things. But mostly what I learned was that everyone has a story and everyone has a deep desire to tell their story. So that they would come up to me, and I was there, I in my bandana, I had long hair, and I'd be at the side of the road with my bike.
Colum, don't.
Yeah, thank you very much. I know. I'm glad you noticed.
Very impressive.
And they come up and they'd look at the bicycle and the pannier bags and the sleeping bag and the tent, and they say, "What are you doing?" And I say, "Well, I'm going cross country." But within 5 minutes, they would be telling me their own story, and a part of me that they were telling me their story because they wanted me to take it with me and go down the road. And so, in a weird way, vicariously, they were becoming novelists. And so many of us, want our story to be known, not in a chest thumping sort of way, but because we'd like to be understood. I realized this again many years later when I did another book called This Side of Brightness, and I stayed with the homeless people in the subway tunnels of New York. And they were like living down in the tunnels, the various tunnels in various parts. And, one of the things I realized, the food wasn't the problem and clothing wasn't the problem, but dignity was the problem. And they liked nothing more than to be able to sit around and to talk with somebody. You try to harness that sort of energy without becoming sentimental about it. I do think there's a difference between having sentiment and being sentimental. So I definitely don't want everyone to go to my sort of school, but I would like everyone to have access to telling not only their own story, but listening to the story of someone else and seeing that the world is a little bit bigger than that arc where we can stretch our telephone. I think that's what you do. I think that's what a lot of artists want to do. And the more we can get out there and debate this stuff, and argue with one another, and in a positive, constructive way, and make those forums for citizens, the better off we're going to be. It's going to take a lot of work, though, and it takes a lot of bravery to do it.
Yeah, and of course, Dylan had another song called Dignity, dignity being such an important theme. Let's end, Colum, by you just telling us briefly, for people who hadn't heard of narrative form, want to learn more, maybe they're involved with a local school, maybe they're at school, maybe they're a parent. What should people do?
Well, we'd love to get people involved. Go on to narrative4.com. You can become a facilitator through our online facilitator training. You can become somebody who supports us. You can get your school involved. You can become involved as a volunteer. The bigger this network grows, the more powerful it seems to me that you can be both tiny and epic at the same time. You can be both local and universal. So if they want to get involved and get their school involved, I would like nothing more than to see them get involved. And I just say I enjoy your work so much. It's a pleasure to get on the program, but it's a real pleasure to get this message across, because these are rough times, and if we can do anything at all to mitigate them, I think, well, something like Narrative 4 can do it,
And I assume you're a non-profit. How are you funded?
We're funded by foundations, individuals. I've got I do a lot of dinners and do a lot of talks. I do knock on a lot of doors. I have a marvelous co-founder, Lisa Consiglio. We have a great staff. This takes up a lot of my time, but I love doing it. I actually, strangely enough, feel that it's almost as powerful, if not more powerful, to me than books. And I don't know if I would have said that to you 10 years ago or 20 years ago, but I do think that as the work takes shape and as it grows, for me, it has a more powerful influence than the books themselves.
Yeah, I think, Colum, that bicycle journey has been continuing with Narrative 4. Real honor to have you on the show, talking not about books, but about your work at Narrative 4. I know you're working on a new book, and we will certainly get you back on the show when that book comes out. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Hi, this is Andrew again. Thank you so much for listening or watching the show. If you enjoyed it, please subscribe. We're on Substack, YouTube, Apple, Spotify, all the platforms. And I'd be very curious as to your comments as well on what you think of the show, how it can be improved, and the kinds of guests that you would enjoy hearing or listening to in future. Thank you again.